Boa tarde, sejam bem-vindos à 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP, que distingue a excelência nacional na gestão de fundos de investimento e de fundos de pensões e que pelo segundo ano consecutivo se realiza em formato digital. Para iniciar esta festa dos fundos portugueses a dar as boas-vindas a todos os que nos acompanham à distância, passo a palavra a João Pratas, Presidente da Associação Portuguesa de Fundos de Investimento, Pensões e Patrimónios. Muito
Olá,
boa tarde.
Boa tarde, como está?
Tudo bem?
Obrigado. Excelentíssimos senhores, membros dos Conselhos de Administração, das Autoridades de Supervisão e das demais autoridades nacionais, caros convidados, caros colegas e amigos, muito boa tarde e bem-vindos à cerimónia da APFIPP e do Jornal de Negócios e à atribuição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos de 2021. É com grande prazer que dou a todos as boas-vindas a esta cerimónia que já é recorrente e onde celebramos as atividades que acompanhamos. Depois de quase 2 anos a viver uma experiência absolutamente inesperada e dramática, parece agora que podemos estar esperançados de que o pior já passou. Apesar de parecer haver uma luz ao fundo do túnel, consideramos que ainda não seria prudente a realização desta cerimónia ao vivo e queríamos, mais uma vez, que a sua realização passasse a ser online. Após todo este tempo a viver online, esperamos ter aprendido a criar uma sessão animada e interessante. Esta nossa cerimónia tem como objetivo principal destacar aquilo que melhor foi feito durante o ano pelos nossos profissionais. Iremos, assim, premiar, como é habitual, os melhores fundos. Além disso, iremos este ano também atribuir os prémios Personalidade do Ano e da melhor dissertação académica. Iremos ter, igualmente, 2 painéis de discussão sobre 2 temas que consideramos estar no topo da nossa agenda. O primeiro sobre finanças sustentáveis e o segundo relativo ao equilíbrio entre a necessidade de desenvolvermos uma sólida união de mercados de capitais e a proteção do investidor. Teremos a honra de poder contar com intervenções que certamente irão partilhar ideias novas para reflexão. Após meses de absoluta invulgaridade, o nosso mundo não terminou. Depois de um susto inicial e com grandes apoios públicos, a economia tem conseguido manter-se com alguma estabilidade. Para além das batalhas de curto e médio prazo que temos pela frente na recuperação daquilo que se perdeu nos últimos meses, temos outros enormes desafios. As finanças sustentáveis entraram num novo ciclo, com a entrada em vigor de vasta legislação que quer forçar mudanças para o planeta. Esta mudança é já parte integrante da nossa atividade. Penso que devemos participar nela ativamente, mas devemos também cooperar de forma construtiva com todos os intervenientes no mercado, designadamente poder político e supervisores, para melhor determinar qual o sentido exato que deve ter a adoção de uma gestão sustentável, porque há ainda muitas incertezas sobre a melhor forma de implementar esta realidade tão complexa. O futuro das pensões de reforma é outro dossiê sobre o qual temos todos que nos debruçar com muita preocupação e empenho. O Aging Report 2021 alerta para o facto de que Portugal vai perder 20% da sua população até 2070 e o nível das reformas, quando comparadas com os salários de vida ativa, vai baixar de cerca de 75% para perto de 40% nos próximos 30 anos. É por isso urgente informar e abrir a discussão sobre a forma como no futuro a população poderá assegurar uma reforma que permita manter um nível de vida mais próximo daquele que teve na sua vida ativa. Estou a falar dos nossos filhos que irão durante os próximos anos assegurar as nossas reformas a um nível que não será aquele que eles próprios terão. Não pode ser isso que queremos para os nossos filhos. Uma nota final positiva sobre a nossa atividade. O volume dos fundos de investimento imobiliários cresceu durante este período de pandemia de 13 mil milhões de euros em final de 19 para 18 mil milhões de euros em final de agosto deste ano. O valor mais elevado desde agosto de 2008 e o volume em fundos de pensões cresceu neste mesmo período de 21,8 mil milhões de euros para 23,6 mil milhões de euros em final de junho, o valor mais elevado de que há registro. São sinais positivos, quer pelo crescimento da poupança que representa, quer pelo facto desta poupança estar a ser investida e não meramente a ser guardada em depósitos. Mas também aqui é fundamental continuar a ser desenvolvido um esforço contínuo para que a poupança se torne uma realidade sólida em Portugal, bem como que parte da mesma permita sustentar um mercado de capitais ativo. Muito obrigado a todos os que nos acompanham neste evento. É um prazer e uma honra tê-los connosco. Espero que esta cerimónia possa ser uma boa celebração e um fator de união entre todos.
Muito obrigado, Dr. João Pratas. A APFIPP conta desde 2016 com a colaboração do Jornal de Negócios na organização dos Prémios Melhores Fundos. Em representação do Jornal de Negócios, Diana Ramos, sua diretora, enviou-nos umas breves palavras.
Olá a todos, este é mais um ano em que o Jornal Negócios, a referência no jornalismo económico em Portugal, é parceiro da APFIPP nos Prémios Melhores Fundos. Fazemos-o porque acreditamos que só um mercado de capitais forte e dinâmico poderá ajudar a economia no seu processo de crescimento e desenvolvimento. Ainda que muitas vezes esquecido pelas políticas públicas em Portugal, o mercado de capitais é essencial no financiamento das empresas. Um problema ainda mais atual depois de uma pandemia que castigou o tecido industrial no país. É também relevante na criação de soluções de poupança para pequenos aforradores, num panorama em que as ofertas para investimentos rentáveis são cada vez mais escassas e num ano em que a volatilidade e os riscos são mais elevados. No momento em que a APFIPP se prepara para distinguir os melhores gestores de fundos em Portugal pelo retorno dado aos investidores, não poderíamos deixar de acompanhar e aplaudir a iniciativa. Um estudo sobre a literacia financeira realizado pela CMVM mostra-nos como ainda são tantos os passos a dar neste setor. Só 28% da população em Portugal, isto é, menos de 1 em cada 3 portugueses, é investidor. 8% já o foram no passado e 64% nem sequer ousaram entrar nesse desafio. Daí que o papel da APFIPP na promoção do investimento seja ainda mais relevante. Vivemos tempos desafiantes, com as empresas a precisarem de novas respostas para o seu futuro financeiro e com o Governo a lançar uma revisão do Código dos Valores Mobiliários que levanta mais dúvidas do que certezas sobre o mercado de capitais em Portugal. Há muito caminho por fazer e o Jornal Negócios continuará ao lado da APFIPP nesse percurso. A todos os que aqui hoje forem premiados, agradecemos o trabalho diário em prol de um mercado de capitais robusto e dinâmico, por mais que os constrangimentos das políticas públicas impeçam outros trilhos neste setor. Votos de uma ótima tarde e parabéns aos vencedores.
A edição 2021 dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP tem o especial apoio de um conjunto de entidades que se associaram a esta iniciativa, tornando possível a realização de mais esta edição e a quem a APFIPP agradece toda a valiosa colaboração. São elas, na categoria de Main Sponsor, a Allianz Global Investors, a Amundi Asset Management, a BBVA Fundos, a BDO e Associados, a Fidelity International, a JP Morgan Asset Management, a Moraes Leitão, Galvão Teles, Soares da Silva e Associados, a Nordea Asset Management, a Schroders Investment Management. Na categoria de Gold Sponsor, contamos com a colaboração da Euronext Lisbon. E este ano, para além de se conhecer os vencedores da 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP, teremos a oportunidade de promover 2 momentos de debate sobre 2 importantes temas da atualidade que integram a agenda da indústria e gestão de ativos, e são eles as finanças sustentáveis e a proteção do investidor. As finanças sustentáveis são um tema de âmbito universal, diria até inevitável e crucial na definição das estratégias futuras das empresas, e as empresas que atuam no mercado nacional não são exceção. Para ilustrar o compromisso no domínio da sustentabilidade de uma empresa portuguesa, vejamos um breve vídeo que a Galp preparou e que nos abrirá o palco para o debate que se seguirá mais à frente neste evento sobre o tema das finanças sustentáveis.
At Galp, we believe the future belongs to all of us, and we strive every day to develop sustainable businesses, reinforcing our decarbonisation path towards becoming net zero emissions in 2050. By 2025, about 50% of our net investments are aimed at capturing opportunities from the energy transition. We combine a strong environmental performance with industry-leading cost competitiveness, and every year we evaluate biodiversity and water risks. Assuring safety is a priority, conducting human rights assessments in more than 90% of our operations in the past 3 years, including ESG criteria in 100% of our purchases. We channel our people's value, promoting equality and diversity. We are a part of Bloomberg's Gender Equality Index, and we will work on an accelerated convergence to gender parity until 2030. We integrate the best reporting standards and guidelines, fostering transparency in our relationship with stakeholders. Our good practices are recognized by several ESG indexes, We lead the Dow Jones Sustainability Index in Europe and ranking third globally. We believe that sustainable finance will promote sustainable and resilient projects like ours. And financial players, institutional investors and investment funds will be key partners in this transformation process. We want to be, each and every day, a brand committed to an ethical and responsible performance, creating long-term value for all our stakeholders. Let's regenerate the future together.
Como referi, o tema das finanças sustentáveis continuará a fazer parte desta edição e teremos a oportunidade de ter vários especialistas a partilhar a sua visão e perspectivas sobre esta matéria. Mas antes de dar continuidade ao debate, vamos conhecer já alguns dos vencedores desta 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP. Antes de mais, referir que nesta edição serão atribuídos um total de 15 prémios, dos quais 7 se enquadram no âmbito da Gestão Nacional de OICVM e OIAVM, 2 no quadro da Gestão Nacional de Organismos de Investimento Imobiliário, outros 2 no quadro da Gestão Nacional de Fundos de Pensões Abertos e 2 na esfera dos Fundos de Planos de Poupança-Reforma, ou mais conhecidos por fundos PPR. Será ainda distinguida a melhor dissertação académica e a personalidade do ano no domínio da gestão de ativos e de fundos de pensões. Recordar também que a BDO acompanhou e certificou pela 5ª vez a aplicação dos critérios definidos no regulamento da atribuição destes prémios, conferindo o selo de qualidade aos procedimentos e práticas adotados que determinaram a atribuição dos prémios aos vencedores que hoje se anunciam. Está na altura de desvendar o primeiro bloco de vencedores desta 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP. Ora, no âmbito da Gestão Nacional de Organismos de Investimento Coletivo em Valores Mobiliários e de Organismos de Investimento Alternativo em Valores Mobiliários, são distinguidos os fundos domiciliados em Portugal, que são automaticamente candidatos, e os fundos não domiciliados em Portugal, que apresentem candidatura para o efeito. Das 10 categorias que integram os prémios no âmbito da Gestão Nacional de OICVM e OIAVM, serão galardoados um total de 7, uma vez que as restantes categorias não alcançaram os 5 fundos elegíveis para se proceder à atribuição de prémio a estas categorias. E assim, na categoria de fundos de ações europeias, o melhor fundo é o Fundo Caixa Ações Europa Socialmente Responsável, gerido pela Caixa Gestão de Ativos. Muitos parabéns ao vencedor.
É com grande satisfação que recebemos este prémio. A Caixa Gestão de Ativos, através da equipa de investimentos aqui representada, agradece à APFIPP e ao Jornal de Negócios esta distinção, que permeia a qualidade e consistência do desempenho do nosso fundo, Caixa Ações Europa Socialmente Responsável. E agradece também aos nossos clientes a confiança em nós depositada. Muito obrigado.
Estamos na categoria de fundos de ações americanas e o melhor fundo nesta categoria é o Fundo BPI América, categoria D, gerido pela BPI Gestão de Ativos. Parabéns ao vencedor.
Muito obrigado à APFIPP e ao Jornal de Negócios pelo prémio. Foi um ano desafiante, cheio de mudanças e adaptações e é sempre bom ter o trabalho reconhecido. E esperemos que estejamos novamente cá para o ano, mas desta vez todos juntos a festejar.
E chegamos à categoria de outros fundos de ações. Esta que é a 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos, Jornal de Negócios APFIPP. E o prémio nesta categoria de outros fundos de ações vai para o Fundo Caixa Ações Líderes Globais, gerido pela Caixa Gestão de Ativos. Estão de parabéns.
É com grande satisfação que recebemos este prémio. A Caixa Gestão de Ativos, através da equipa de investimentos aqui representada, agradece à APFIPP e ao Jornal de Negócios esta distinção, que permeia a qualidade e consistência de desempenho do nosso fundo, Caixa Ações Líderes Globais. E agradece também aos nossos clientes a confiança em nós depositada. Muito obrigado.
Na categoria de fundos de curto prazo, o grande vencedor é o fundo BPI defensivo, gerido pela BPI Gestão de Ativos. Muitos parabéns!
Quero agradecer à APFIPP e ao Jornal Negócios pelo prémio. Este prémio representa para nós o reconhecimento do trabalho de toda a equipa num ano que foi um ano difícil, foi um ano com desafios, um ano atípico e por isso muito obrigado e para o ano estejamos cá novamente.
Vamos conhecer o vencedor na categoria de outros fundos de obrigações. Esta é a 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos, Jornal de Negócios, APFIPP. E o grande vencedor desta categoria Outros Fundos de Obrigações é o fundo NB Eurobond Classe A, gerido pela GNB International Management. Muitos parabéns! Chegamos à categoria de fundos multiativos e o grande vencedor desta categoria é o Fundo Caixa Seleção Global Arrojado, gerido pela Caixa Gestão de Ativos. Estão de parabéns!
É com grande satisfação que recebemos este prémio. A Caixa Gestão de Ativos, através da equipa de investimento aqui presente, agradece à APFIPP e ao Jornal de Negócios esta distinção de melhor fundo multiativo. Primeiro, a qualidade e consistência do desempenho do nosso fundo Caixa Seleção Global Arrojado. E agradece também a todos os nossos clientes pela confiança em nós depositada. Obrigado.
E por fim, na categoria de fundos flexíveis, o melhor fundo é o fundo Discovery Fund FIA, gerido pela Lynx Asset Managers. Estão de parabéns!
É com enorme satisfação que recebemos o prémio de melhor fundo na categoria de fundos flexíveis, atribuído ao Discovery Fund, o qual agradecemos à APFIPP e ao Jornal Negócios.
Este prémio vem distinguir a estratégia de gestão do Discovery Fund, particularmente relevante nesta classe de fundos flexíveis. Este prémio inspira-nos a fazer melhor, na perspectiva de vir a merecer a confiança dos nossos investidores no Discovery Fund.
Este fundo é gerido pela Lynx, com a colaboração da Decorreu Capital, com quem partilhamos esta distinção.
Fazendo uma pausa na atribuição dos prémios, avançamos agora, como prometido, para um momento de debate em que o foco serão as finanças sustentáveis. Este painel conta com a participação da Allianz Global Investors, da BBVA Fundos, da Fidelity International e da Schroders Investment Management. Tem o especial apoio da Amundi Asset Management, da JP Morgan Asset Management e da Nordea Asset Management. O painel será moderado pelo Dr. Jorge Sousa Teixeira, presidente do Grupo de Trabalho sobre Finanças Sustentáveis da APFIPP e administrador da BPI Gestão de Ativos, Grupo CaixaBank. Antes de se iniciar o debate, recordamos que poderão ser submetidas de forma anónima questões ao moderador do painel através da área de Q&A disponível na página de acesso ao evento. Sem mais demoras, Dr. Jorge Teixeira tem a palavra.
Hi, welcome everyone and congratulations to all the winners of the awards and also to all the other mutual fund managers that we have in Portugal. It's really important to have a vibrant asset management industry here in Portugal, but also to have our guests and international participants as we have today. As we can see from Galp's opening video, the world and sustainability are undergoing significant changes. ESG is no longer just about sectors. And you can see an oil major company with a good ESG assessment, or sometimes a tech player with a horrible rating. So there are currently dozens of companies that issue ESG analysis, similar to what traditional rating agencies used to do for credit quality. And there is a growing scrutiny over sustainability, which can increase or take away market access for issuers. Clients and regulators are also exerting enormous pressures on professional investors to behave accordingly and manage the so-called ESG, environmental, social, and governance risks, and incorporate them in the products that we offer. So it is really important to ask how asset managers throughout the world are tackling this issue. To talk about them, we have the pleasure to have with us
the representatives of 4 international asset management companies. All of them are members of APFIPP. Let me introduce them briefly. So first of all, Gita Gal, welcome. She is the Global Head of Research Fixed Income at Fidelity, where she has been for more than 10 years, and she now oversees a team of approximately 10 analysts and graduates in 5 locations, if I'm not wrong, Gita. And she's also been working with the onboarding of the new private credit team. So Gita, welcome.
Thank you.
Anna Simmons is the head of sustainability strategy at Schroders. She's responsible for, of course, the sustainability strategy. In this role, she works in partnership with the client-facing group and product teams to deliver a more cohesive set of investment options to Schroders clients. She's also responsible for the sustainability capability. Anna, welcome, and thank you very much for participating. We also have...
Thank you very much.
Yeah. We also have Alberto Gomez Reino, who is the head of sustainable investments at BBVA Asset Management. He has more than 20 years of experience in investment. He is responsible for the sustainable investments within the global investment team, and he leads the team which is in charge now of establishing and controlling the sustainable criteria applicable to all of BBVA's investment portfolios. Alberto, welcome. And last but not least, Dennis Baas is the lead sustainability specialist within Allianz Global Investors Sustainable Investment Office. In his day-to-day, he is actively involved in shaping Allianz Global Investors' overall sustainable product strategy and foster the development of new sustainable investment approaches, and represents here the sustainability platform in cross-functional sustainability projects. Welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for the time that you have to dedicate to this award session and to discuss what is the hot topic today, which is ESG and sustainability. It's unavoidable. And to start off, I would like to see a video, to show a video that JP Morgan kindly sent to us. If you could please put on the video.
Why do individuals invest? Increasingly, not only for their financial future, but for a sustainable future for us all. Every year, more and more investors choose to invest for positive change. In the environment and society, as well as for their financial goals. At JP Morgan Asset Management, we invest to create sustainable value for our clients in a sustainable world. We believe that the way companies manage sustainable risks and opportunities has consequences for their business results. That's why we've integrated environmental, social and governance, or ESG factors, across our active fund range, and offer a broad range of dedicated ESG integrated and sustainable solutions. Drawing on our long heritage of active management and the expertise of our global research team to help investors build the future they want to see.
Yeah, so JP Morgan Asset Management is talking about what we as an industry have been doing for some time now. So we are measuring, we are evaluating sustainability risks and opportunities through the integration of the so-called environmental and social, but also corporate governance factors, or ESG, that we are using more and more in decision-making. In fact, in the asset management industry, we are trying to perceive to what extent our returns and risks in our investments can be affected by ESG events or issues, which means that we need to have access to them. So I would like now to start here some conversation, and let me go over to Schroders and Fidelity, and Anna and Gita, starting with Anna maybe. From Schroders and Fidelity's point of view, is the lack of information standards a problem? Is it a problem for you? How do you manage it? How can you compare the different data that you have access to? And it is a lot of data, we know. If you would be kind enough to start, Anna, and then we'll pass over to Gita.
Thank you very much. And I think it's fair to say that over the last few years, the level of data availability has grown incredibly. And why I highlight that is because that has allowed us to invest very heavily in creating a whole suite of proprietary investment tools that help us with that comparison and also help us identify and understand how investments might have how sustainability might have an impact.
Good. And Gita, do you want to? Yeah, sorry, Anna. Go.
I'm terribly sorry. I think my speech was cut out then.
No. It was just there was a pause here. Sorry. Go on.
Okay, if I may, I'll just touch on a few more points. So in creating our own tools that help us understand sustainability, risks and opportunities related to underlying companies, I think it's fair to say that before we created those tools, we did look at third parties. Could we use information from people like MSCI or Sustainalytics? But the reason that we wanted to create our own tools was to allow us to actually look through and really understand the data that comes directly from companies. So our tools are very much built bottom up, where we start by gathering information from companies, things like what are their level of carbon emissions, details around gender board diversity or satisfaction with management. And we use that data to build our own tools to get that perspective that we can truly understand around sustainability.
So thank you very much, Anna. This is really the challenge that we are having now, which is to ramp up the quality and quantity of information that we need for our decision making. Gita, do you want to give also your perspective on this?
Yes, thank you very much. So I guess the first thing to acknowledge is the lack of information is causing challenges for asset managers, no matter what asset class they're focused on. And it's not just the lack of standards, but also the lack of data across certain regions, across certain asset classes, and the like that can present a challenge. What I would say is there are differences in reporting even in markets where data availability is good. One company may measure its Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Another company may measure Scope 1, Scope 2, and make an attempt to measure Scope 3. And it makes it very difficult to make comparisons across companies. And the same thing can be said for social and governance. You know, some companies will talk about gender diversity only as it pertains to the overall employment base, and others will make an attempt to look at senior managers and say, actually, do we have gender diversity? And some attempt to go beyond gender and to look at racial diversity, different disabilities, all of those kinds of factors, which ultimately will be contributing to a more robust understanding of their performance. So there is no doubt that it would be better if we had more consistency of data. I think there are a few points to make that are incredibly positive. So the first thing is when you are at an asset manager like Fidelity, where our sustainability is embedded into our investment research analyst team, we are talking to companies every day about what they can do to present their information more clearly, what information we're looking at. And I think that we've seen a remarkable change, particularly in the last 18 months. And obviously, I'm focused on fixed income, but especially in fixed income markets where the quality and quantity of disclosure has improved significantly. Secondly, we have organizations like SASB, but not exclusively SASB, working on standardizing the metrics that we can all look at so that at least it'll be much more like accounting, where you can kind of say, I know what the revenue line means. This is kind of what goes into it and what doesn't go into it. And I think that will help a lot on the sustainability side. And finally, we also are getting sustainability standards from organizations like the Science Based Targets Initiative, which I think will be really helpful as we try to actually bring commitments into the real scientific world. But the point that I want to make is no matter how much data is available, no matter how much, how many standards are kind of presented out there, even if we think about something that has been established for many, many years, like accounting, different asset managers, different analysts, different investors interpret the information they're provided with differently. And so we still have an opportunity to differentiate ourselves, to engage with companies, and to really make a difference, even when we get to the stage where all that information is available.
Well, amazing, precisely. So, and talking about initiatives, by the time we finish this conversation between us, there will be another initiative, I'm sure, throughout in the world, because there's one every day. So if you have not joined one, you will be able to today. So let me grab this what the two of you said. Thank you very much. And about the availability and quality of information, and pass on to Alberto and to Dennis, who are coming from BBVA and Allianz, two European, originally from Europe. And there's a belief that the way that companies manage their sustainability risks will have a consequence on their business results. But in order to do this, we need information. Do you think, Alberto and Dennis, that the new Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive will succeed in making sustainability reporting by companies more reliable, more comparable, more consistent? And how will this help you, and taking into consideration what Anna and Gita have already said, of course? So, Alberto.
Yeah. We at BBVA, we think that what was said in the video is perfectly right. I mean, we think that taking into account non-financial information help us to improve risk-adjusted returns. So, I mean, is a key aspect on the decision-making process. And we have just seen that getting reliable and homogeneous ESG information is challenging, and at least now relies on a combination of external providers and internal research. And we also, as said before, we are seeing various international efforts that try to tackle this issue and try to define and standardize common standards. Within the EU, the Sustainable Finance Action Plan have several initiatives that try to tackle this issue. We need, as you said before, quality information, at least to report the important aspects of sustainability on our portfolios. And the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive aims at ensure that investing companies report the information that we need to fulfill our reporting requirements. So in this global spectrum of initiatives that you mentioned before, it's good as an standardization process. But I mean, this not solves every problem we face right now, because as Gita said before, the international standardization is far from concrete. So, I mean, we are quite far in that sense to have common information. We are taking the first step to have at least a common information for European-based companies. But I think we are quite far to have all the information and the granularity of this information available to all the investors. So I think it's a good effort. We need at least a couple years from now to have quality information on a standardization on a standard basis. And despite that, I think we will still need external providers and internal research as we have right now.
Yeah, as we've always needed in the past, and external information. So Dennis, from Allianz's point of view, do you want to also comment a bit on this perspective of having more information standardized, at least for European companies? There's a discussion now around how far this will go regarding non-European based companies.
No, absolutely. Before I add to Alberto's point, let me first thank you very much for the invitation and for the fantastic organization. It's a real pleasure to speak at the APFIPP panel. And coming to the topic, we at Allianz Global Investors, being an active asset manager, clearly rely on financial and non-financial data disclosures from investee companies to generate financial alpha and sustainable outcomes. As such, we are clearly in favor of this EU-wide directive, so the CSRD directive, which should foster data comparability and reliability. Standardized data will help us to better identify ESG leaders, but even more so the ESG laggards. And as Alberto already alluded to, being an investor with global reach and global portfolios, we would like to see such initiatives even extended to a global perspective. But we believe that Europe leads the way here, and other jurisdictions in Asia particular, or maybe as well in the US, might follow or get at least inspired from such directives. And then a second point is, personally, I find it super exciting that the EU starts to think not only on parameters to report, but as well about the technical aspects. So the idea to have a machine-readable, structured approach to access sustainability data points is an important step towards an enhanced digitalization. At Allianz Global Investors, we have, for example, a dedicated AI team that has designed a natural language processing tool that reads and extracts information from thousands of newspaper articles, analyst reports across various languages on a daily basis. And then this information is automatically combined into relevant signals for our portfolio managers to allow for an improved alpha generation potential. And then if we could combine this with more and more standardized machine-readable ESG sustainability data point, with the help of these AI tools, we can enhance even further our proprietary ESG scores with more actual or even a forward-looking element. And I think that's the crucial aspect here.
Yeah, true. And so this AI is our new competitor. So we are now not competing anymore with each other. We are collaborating. And we are all facing the big competition of AI and ML, machine learning. All of us are using it, and we know how important it is, especially in sustainability. Let me ask the production to put on a video from Amundi that talks a bit about the challenges that we have ahead as we move forward from integration into something more.
Globalization and progress. Robotization and the labor market, artificial intelligence and education, taxation and redistribution. We move forward, we make progress, we get nowhere, we go backwards. We innovate and offer you our services. We suggest ideas, we discuss ideas. We consider ideas and we get nowhere, or worse, we go backwards. We are being sold a dream of a more humane world that is more respectful of ordinary people and their expectations and needs. But at the same time, inequality has never before been so widespread. Inequality has never before been so widely condemned. Income, education, health, diversity, environment, all these things are affected. And the world is watching as the world takes to the streets. Gender equality, territorial divide, purchasing power. No country is immune, and the list of grievances is long. And we're getting nowhere. We're going backwards. The growing inequality is a threat to the long-term growth and stability of our democracies. But all is far from lost. As people are becoming more aware, politicians and business leaders are taking the issue seriously so that our society can move forward and continue to make progress.
In a rapidly changing world, where the truths of yesterday are destined to become tomorrow's uncertainties, how do you decide who is the right business partner for you? At Amundi, our objective is to be a trusted partner, working every day in the interest of our clients and society. This principle has inspired our activities for over 10 years. We pay close attention to the needs of each and every client and offer the investment solutions most suited to them. We share our understanding of the world with them through the expertise of our investment professionals. We are committed to responsible finance and investment processes that incorporate environmental, social, and governance criteria at their very core. We work with the world's largest institutions, putting environmental transition within the reach of everyone. And we are present across the world, close to our clients. This is how we earn your trust on a daily basis. Amundi. Confidence must be earned.
So I always get emotional about people. In this video, Amundi talks about progress, innovation, advances, but also some challenges on redistribution, a more human world. In the second block, they talk about ESG integration at the core of their decision, and we know that we are all being called upon this. And the dialogue with the institutions, the proximity with clients, it seems very aligned with these new EU regulations that we have, in particular the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation that came into force now in March. And I would now do some mix between you, and I would go over to Fidelity and BBVA, starting with maybe Gita. What does it mean for you, for your companies, your asset managers, Fidelity and BBVA, to promote social or environmental aspects, which is the new challenge of Article 8 in the SFDR. So if you want to just give us a bit of education on that. Gita.
Promoting social or environmental aspects means nothing less than integrating our sustainability values into everything we do. It means looking at our investments, of course, but it also means setting internal targets, commitments to net zero, commitments to diversity, and it also means supporting the communities in which we operate, to name just a few of our own goals. From our investment philosophy, it means integrating ESG into our investment process in a way that is authentic to the characteristics of the firm. For example, it means tapping into our large cross-asset global investment analyst team to evaluate companies and countries on their sustainability credentials, rather than relying solely on the sustainable investing team. It means creating our own proprietary ratings, which are owned by our investment analysts. It means believing in a philosophy of engagement over exclusion, because it is the only way to make real change. Are we perfect at everything we do? Of course not. So it means putting ourselves under the microscope, examining what we do, and figuring out how we can evolve and improve in this rapidly changing segment of the marketplace. And what we would argue is that this is the only way that we can actually achieve the sustainability goals that we all hold for the future of our planet and of our populations.
2030, it's around the corner. So without us, we really have a role to play here. Alberto, do you want to talk to us a bit about promoting E&S, environmental and social aspects?
Yeah, sure. Historically, it's been very difficult in the absence of standardized criteria to verify that sustainable characteristics advertised by every product were met or even true. No regulation that came on March set several standards asking financial institutions to be transparent about their approach to sustainability, how they monitor sustainable risk, how we interact with companies, and how everything translates into specific products with different or non-sustainable characteristics. Regarding Article A, the products you asked us to develop, I mean, they promote ESG characteristics. For assessing that we are promoting these characteristics, let me talk in a minute about BBVA approach to sustainability as an asset manager. We launched a sustainability plan back in 2019 that was quite ambitious. It was to transform investment vehicles in sustainable investment solutions. We initiated this path 20 years ago, but we launched this sustainability plan, I mean, to really check every point we wanted to improve and to assess in the coming years. We have 4 pillars to achieve this. We have exclusion policies that should be applied to every product we manage. We have integration process. We have scores for every investment we have in our portfolios. We also use impact investing as a way to build portfolios, and we also have a formal voting and engagement policy. Those 4 pillars establish mandatory minimums for all the portfolios we manage, but for an Article 8, this is not enough. For an Article 8 fund, what we see is that the application of these pillars, together with every climate objective you may define, if you want, should be easily traceable and could be checked through corresponding reporting, whether it's regulatory or not. I mean, we want to be fully transparent with what we do. So we are promoting any specific aspect. It should be clear in every information we produce that or anyone can check that it is true. So and we also in the past months, apart from using, I mean, the traditional ESG information that is probably more focused on risk control, we are moving towards impact investment, which is probably a more active way of investing portfolios regarding sustainability factors.
And reaching the goals, as Gita was if we want to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, we really have to have an impact also. So maybe we've been talking from our perspective as asset managers, as investors. All of us we are investors, but there's one thing that we cannot live without, which is clients, and and unfortunately also fortunately also regulators. Let me correct that. And in the beginning, the chairman of APFIPP was talking about the big growth that we're witnessing in the Portuguese market. So there is interest from clients, and I would like to hear from you, Dennis and Anna, from Allianz and Schroders' point of view. How are you looking at SFDR and sustainability, but from a client point of view? So how is demand picking up, given all this news around and the fuzz? Dennis, can you brief us on Allianz's point of view and then maybe pass on the word to Anna?
Sure. So You mentioned, or in the video, we have seen the reference to ESG integration. And I think we all would agree on the fact that ESG integration is a widely used term, but there is no industry-wide common understanding of it. So we at Allianz Global Investors see it as our duty to society and to our clients to improve transparency by becoming a bit more precise in our language. And that's why we have started to categorize our offering alongside 3 different categories of sustainable investment strategies. And so far we have found that this categorization is very helpful for our clients to better understand what the differences are between the sustainable investment strategies and guide them then to their desired outcomes. So the first category is about ESG risk management. That means basically that our portfolio managers are aware of ESG tail risks in their portfolio. In addition, they have information on principal adverse impacts, such as CO2 emissions, water usage, and so on. Then for low ESG rated companies, the portfolio manager has either to divest or explain why she thinks that the return expectation compensates for the risks. And we see that for many clients, and not only here in Europe, but even more so maybe in other jurisdictions, this approach is the first step into the sustainable investing world with relatively low impact on their tracking error targets that many, in particular, institutional clients have. But here, very important, when classifying under our strategies under SFDR, all funds in this category, so in this ESG risk management category, are Article 6 only. And
just for the entry point. So this is just for the entry point. You already do a lot of things. Thanks for sharing. It's important for clients to know. Yeah, go on. Sorry, Article 8.
Yeah, exactly. Now the second category is around Article 8. And this comprises all our sustainability-focused funds, which all apply an exclusionary element, and then combined with a second layer of sustainable approach. And this second layer can be, for example, a best-in-class strategy, an engagement strategy, or a strategy more related to transitionary aspects. And the third category then is around our impact-focused strategies. Here we combine all strategies that have the intention, so intentionality is here the key word, to contribute to positive sustainable outcomes. And then this can either be measured via the contribution, for example, to one or several United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or directly via use of proceeds bonds, for example, green bonds or social bonds, or private market investments, for example, on the renewable energy side. So the objective is that these strategies will invest predominantly in sustainable investments and then be classified as Article 9 products. So all in all, currently we have around 120 sustainable funds. And when I say sustainable funds, I mean Article 8, Article 9 funds. And this represents around 25% of our overall fund range. And we are pleased to see that some of our most successful funds, both in terms of performance and net cash flows this year, are sustainable funds. So basically, we can observe that clients start to understand that they can make the difference with their capital allocation decision. And I think this is a really positive aspect that we see.
Yeah, amazing. This is one of the big motivations that we have as an industry, which is we know we can integrate, we can promote, and we can even have impact with limited or sometimes almost no impact on the return or risk profile of our products. So this is quite an insightful thing. Thank you very much, Dennis, and congratulations on your categorization of 20+% of your offering already. Anna, do you want to give us your input on this? How Schroeder is approaching this?
Absolutely. And if I may, I might start out by what we're hearing from our clients and then translate that into what that's meant for our own approach around SFDR. Each year we undertake surveys across both our institutional and also our retail clients to understand their broad approach around investment, but specifically we ask questions about sustainability. And what we've seen over the past few years is a sort of uptick, if you like, in the focus on sustainability. And for our institutional survey, and we published the results just a few months ago, for the latest 2021 survey, I think it's fair to say that COVID has reinforced the importance of sustainable investing. And when we ask clients about, will this sort of change the way that you're thinking going forward, and the majority, so over 50%, so 52%, said that they would be actually investing sustainably going forward. What's driving that? And I think this is really important. For the first time, we asked about the impact that clients could have on people and planet. And that was the primary reason that the institutional clients highlighted. Secondly, they talked about alignment with their sort of corporate or internal values. The third point, and this links really neatly into SFDR, is that it is regulatory pressure as well. So that's on the institutional side. So clearly gathering momentum there. We see similar results from our retail investors as well. And we asked over 23,000 people last year for their views on sustainable investing. And I thought two headlines I would highlight. First of all, 77% of the respondents said that they wanted to invest in line with their values. They would not invest against their beliefs. And 47% said that they, going forward, would be looking to invest in sustainable funds. And that's up from 42% of the respondents in 2018. So why have I told you all of those numbers? It reinforces, in our view, the importance of offering a breadth of investment solutions, recognizing that our clients are on that sustainability journey. Dennis outlined the approach that they've taken at AGI around sort of identifying Article 6, Article 8 and Article 9 funds. You probably won't be that surprised, but Schroders has taken a very similar approach. So ESG integration being at the heart of our Article 6 funds. That's that risk management, understanding the extent to which sustainability could have a financial risk impact on their investments. For Article 8, we've introduced what we call a binding constraint. That really helps with the point that Alberto made on being able to measure and be very transparent to clients about sustainability within their investment funds. So for every one of our Article 8 funds, we have a quantitative way of identifying how sustainable is the fund and comparing that with the benchmark. That's using Schroders' proprietary tools that I talked about in the first section. And our Article 9 funds, again, they are looking for those sustainable outcomes, the intentionality of the underlying investments. And in terms of where Schroders is in that journey, so in March, around 25% of our European funds were either Article 8 or Article 9, and we are working hard at the moment to transition a number of our funds from Article 6 to Article 8, and later in the year we'll be able to come back with an update on that, but it's safe to say that the majority of those assets will be categorized as Article 8 or 9.
Good. We're all on that journey throughout Europe, and well, I feel like I have to become an adult in this world of sustainability, because when I was a kid, my usual word would be it was not on purpose, and we do need a purpose now. And I didn't mean it, and now you have to mean to do something. You have to really try to do something. So that's why we invited Nordea Asset Management to send us a video that I've been using on my classes, and I keep using them internally even, that talks about walking the talk. So what are we doing that people don't know that we are all doing as asset managers? And then I'll ask you to talk about it, being active managers. So if you can, please, I would ask production to put on the video.
On the 25th of January 2019, a tailings dam collapsed in the Brazilian municipality of Brumadinho. The tailing dam collected wastewater from a mine operated by the Vale Mining Company. The consequences were disastrous, with more than 235 people killed. Nordea funds own shares in Vale, and these shares were immediately put in quarantine after the tragedy. Senior ESG analyst with Nordea Asset Management, Arvinda Tivana, is in Brazil along with two colleagues to assess what the next step should be.
As an asset manager, you're of course interested in creating value for your clients, but you're also interested in creating the right type of value, not investing in companies that are not managing their risk correctly. We as a responsible investor, Nordea Asset Management, do not want to invest in those kind of companies. So we either exclude the companies or we engage with the companies.
In Brumadinho, they're invited to a meeting with some of the affected townspeople and union representatives. The local union representative calls for cooperation and transparency from Vale.
It was quite unsettling hearing very personal stories, the struggles they went through on the day. They want the company to take responsibility for what it's done and what happened under their watch.
The city's mayor wants Vale to stay and assume their share of the responsibility for the disaster.
E nós temos uma preocupação que daqui 2 anos, se a Vale não continuar pagando os impostos para nós, a cidade fecha. Fecha os postos de saúde, fecha o hospital, fecha a UPA, fecha tudo. É gravíssimo o que aconteceu.
We are heading towards Vale's headquarters. We hope to gain a long-term dialogue with the company and positive engagement, push the company towards more responsible tailing dam management, because responsible companies create long-term value for us as investors. They were very keen on hearing about our observations in Brumadinho, and they took our recommendations seriously. Nordea Asset Management believes in active ownership. We're going to stay engaged with the company to push them in the right direction. If we divest, we won't have any influence on the company going forward. We don't want to see this happen again.
Sorry. No matter how many times I look at this, it is always really touching for me to look at how Nordea as investment professionals, and we see ourselves in this situation a lot of times, they sit, they mourn with the local community in Brumadinho. But I think that the cornerstone of this video is the final outcome. Nordea is not actually, they are not selling, they are not divesting from the company, but they are rather engaging with the company and making the company change. And Vale has made significant changes, not only because of Nordea, but all of us 5 and some other investors, we are always trying to engage with companies. And this is what the investment industry has been leading more towards, which is measuring the impact. And we're getting some questions on the chat on what kind of impact do we have in the world. Okay, this is a great goal, but how about greenwashing? And I think that talking about the way that you, for example, let me start now with Dennis and Gita, Allianz and Fidelity, how do you consider community? So talking about this way of impacting and also avoiding greenwashing, how do you dialogue? How do you consider communities and governmental entities in the way you do your investments? Do you directly engage with them? Gita, can you give us your 2-minute overview and then pass on to to Dennis.
Absolutely. I think this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because obviously I'm the head of fixed income research at Fidelity. And as all of you will know, fixed income markets are not just about corporates. We have a significant number of governments that are issuing debt that we all are investing in. And as a consequence, we don't think that you should just focus on ESG at the corporate level, but you need to extend beyond that. And so what we've done is that we have extended the philosophy and approach and framework, basic framework of assigning sustainability ratings from our corporates to our emerging markets sovereign approach. And that means the same way that we construct our ratings for our corporate issuers, we've constructed a similar framework for our emerging markets sovereigns. And what this means in practice is that our emerging market sovereigns analysts are really going out and trying to use the exact same philosophy that we use for corporates, engagement over exclusion. That was one of the lines that I really loved about that Nordea said, that if we divest, we don't have any influence. So we're talking to countries, we're talking also importantly to state-owned enterprises, often which have much more of a closer kind of corporate style of structure, but have a much deeper community influence. Think about things like transportation networks that have a big influence on the community at large. So we're doing that. I think that the other thing that we have to do is to recognize that we're working in an investment ecosystem. Importance of evaluating the sustainability characteristics of a given government will have an influence on what our corporate bond analysts, what our equity analysts think about investing in the companies in those countries. And it puts an important baseline to everything that we do. And it is that kind of integration and cross-asset idea fertilization that I think becomes really critical to making good investment decisions.
Well, I like fertilization. It's a good way to spread the news, spread the seeds all over the company. I think it's a very interesting way to look at it. Dennis.
Yeah, sure. So basically the reason why I'm here today and not Matt Christensen, our global head of sustainable and impact investing, is because he is currently in Africa this week. So on a due diligence trip for our private equity investments there. So that's an example that we obviously check regularly from time to time on our investments really on site. And the way we typically structure these private market investments in frontier countries is via a blended finance structure. So that means we launch a vehicle, make it accessible to investors, but the selection of investments, there we get advice from development finance institutions, such as the European Investment Bank or the KfW here in Germany. It's because these organizations really have people in those countries and have the expertise on the ground that we don't have. But however, we see it as our obligation to make sure that ESG risks are monitored and that the companies and projects are managed really to the highest standards in terms of environmental and social aspects. So we typically don't do direct engagement on the community level, but we set the standards and monitor that they are adhered to.
Oh, great. Very insightful. I'm actually going to copy a couple of ideas there. We are all, I think. So very good. The Sustainable Development Goals on top of them, they have the SDG 17, which is the partnerships for the goals. And I think what you mentioned there is pretty much in line with that, which is partnering with NGOs or development institutions to help us out. So maybe let me go over to BBVA, Alberto, and to Schroders, Anna, and ask the following. How are your asset management companies dialoguing with investee companies, so the companies that you invest in order to make them change? In particular, when it comes to transition activities in your portfolios, Alberto, if you want to start, and then we'll pass on to Anna.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. In our case, until 2 years ago, our engagement activities were focused on collective initiatives rather than individual engagement with companies. We started a couple of months ago to do these initiatives, and the way we approach it is diverse. We have an ESG rating, and the lowest rated companies are not suitable for investment in most of our portfolios. Despite their regulatory classification, doesn't matter if they are 6, 8, or 9. But in the case that we are already invested in some of these companies when it is downgraded to the lowest ESG rating, we establish an action plan and we do engage with the company just to check if there's a controversy on a specific issue we want to focus on. So we establish an action plan and we follow it in the coming months. So I mean, this investment is not the initial decision. We engage with the companies. They are not much. I mean, only a few of companies, but we tend to focus this kind of engagement with controversies regarding several specific issues. When we talk about transition activities, I mean, we are more constructive in this field. Why? And let me explain myself a little bit. Most of our clients are corporate pension funds and institutional clients that are whose economic activities are on these transitioning activities. So their business models are changing. Regulation is pushing a lot at their businesses. So what we want to understand is that they have plans to manage their business in a different way, and they are setting a specific target to do it so. We are not friends of very wide exclusion policies regarding activities, because we think this is not the perfect way to help companies to overcome their problems. I think that's mainly all.
No, great. I think that this is the topic. A lot of people look at us, investment industry, and when they hear about ESG and sustainability, they think that we are dumping companies. And it's the opposite. We're really trying to help as a group and individually also within our companies, with individual and collective engagements. We're trying to help companies make this transition with us, with our capital, with our funding. And Anna, I'm going to let you close on this. I was trying to see if we had a couple of minutes more, but I just got from the production the word that we are on time. So Anna, do you want to talk a bit about the way that Schroeder is acting there on the engagement front?
Thank you, and I'll keep my comments brief in light of the time challenges. But if I may, I wanted to start out by highlighting a comment that Geeta made in relation to the Nordea video, which is exactly the same element that I wanted to highlight, the focus on engagement and the fact that if you do divest, you don't have the ability to influence a company. It's fair to say that active ownership has been at the heart of Schroeder's approach to sustainability for over 20 years. So we've been an active owner of the companies we invest in for that entire period. And we see the sort of position on how we act as an owner as important as the decision making that went into an investment decision that led us to own that company. We engage, as you would expect, on a whole host of topics. Last year, we engaged on over 2,000 companies globally. So our reach is both global and increasingly it's global. What I would highlight, and if I may, I know you wanted to pick up on some of those transitional elements. So if I just spoke focus a little bit on some of the engagements that we've been having around climate. And this has been one of the areas of focus for our engagement program over the past few years. And two areas that I thought might be interesting was to pick up on the influence that we can have directly on companies establishing their own net zero transition plans. So earlier this year, we wrote to the chairman of the FTSE 350, so that's some of the largest companies in the UK, and asked them to send a detailed and costed plan on their transition and their alignment to a net zero world. We've also engaged heavily with banks, recognising the very important role that banks play in providing capital or providing finance to fossil fuel companies to really understand their own plans and future ambitions around how they will continue to support the transition and how they will be potentially calling or requiring actions from the underlying companies. So that, I think, two really great examples of how our engagement works in practice. What is critical is setting very clear objectives. And this gets to the heart, if I may, of the comment that you made. I think you said in the chat, some comments were coming through on greenwashing. Very clear objectives mean that you can then measure the outcome of that engagement activity and be really transparent in reporting to clients on the engagements you've been having and the actions that you've taken as a result of those engagements.
Well, beautiful. And again, I'm going to take some notes afterwards in the replay and use up a lot of the things that I've been learning today. So I think our time is up, but we did cover some of the questions that the most of the questions that I was getting from the audience. And I would like to thank you very much. You personally, the four of you, your institutions. Thank you very much also to APFIPP to give us the room to discuss these topics, to give some education. It's also in the best interest of sustainability to educate, to pass on information. So again, thank you very much. I learned a lot. I'm sure that our audience is also very much more illuminated than when we started. And I hope that we demystified a lot of bad message that some people are getting about greenwashing or us not doing our job properly. And congratulations to you and your institutions. Also, thank you to our sponsors who were, other sponsors besides you, who were very kind to send some videos for us to be able to create some mindset here. And again, well, I'm open, I'm out there, and whoever wants to reach out to me or any of you, I think we are out there and available to our clients. So thank you very much, and congratulations again on your path to sustainability and to the sustainable development goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
E após este interessante debate, vamos então conhecer mais alguns vencedores desta que é a 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos, Jornal de Negócios APFIPP. Agora, no domínio da Gestão Nacional de Organismos de Investimento Imobiliário, temos duas categorias de prémios: os fundos de investimento imobiliário abertos e os fundos de investimento imobiliário fechados. Temos então que na categoria de fundos de investimento imobiliário abertos, o melhor fundo é o Fundo VIP, gerido pela CILVIP. Muitos parabéns ao vencedor.
Em nome da CILVIP, queremos agradecer aos organizadores deste evento, à APFIPP e Jornal de Negócios, a atribuição do prémio ao Fundo VIP como melhor fundo de investimento imobiliário aberto do mercado. Igualmente, queremos felicitar a equipa da CILVIP por, pelo menos os últimos 3 anos, ter tornado o Fundo VIP um produto de forro atrativo, rentável e seguro. Os nossos agradecimentos.
E na categoria de fundos de investimento imobiliário fechados, o melhor fundo é O Fundo Fundistamo 1, gerido pela Fundistamo. Muitos parabéns.
Boa tarde. Na minha qualidade de Presidente da Fundistamo, venho agradecer e congratular com o primeiro lugar atribuído pela APFIPP ao nosso Fundistamo. Queria, nesta altura, além de agradecer à APFIPP, agradecer o trabalho dos colaboradores da empresa e dos membros da Comissão Executiva, sem os quais não teria sido possível atingir as performances que agora foram premiadas pela nossa associação. Queria agradecer à associação também todo o trabalho que tem desenvolvido em prol da nossa atividade, da indústria dos fundos de investimento imobiliário. Agradecer também à CMVM todo o seu trabalho de supervisão e de controle e manifestar naturalmente uma palavra de esperança e de futuro da nossa atividade e das performances não só do Fundistamo como do Imobiliário Poupança e como de todos os colegas e de todos os fundos que operam no mercado nacional. Boa tarde e obrigado.
Passamos agora à distinção dos melhores fundos PPR, que incluem quer organismos de investimento coletivo, quer fundos de pensões abertos. As categorias dos fundos PPR estão subdivididas com base no nível de risco, sendo premiadas apenas 2 nesta edição. Na categoria de fundos PPR com risco 3, o melhor fundo é o Fundo PPR Vintage, gerido pela GNB. Muitos parabéns aos vencedores. E por fim, na categoria de fundos PPR com risco 4, o melhor fundo é o Fundo NBPPR ou ICVM, gerido pela GNB. Muitos parabéns.
É com enorme orgulho que a GNB Gestão de Ativos recebe estes 3 prémios referentes aos melhores fundos de 2021. Eles são o reflexo do trabalho dedicado à equipa de investimentos com o suporte fundamental das restantes equipas. Não podemos deixar de dar os parabéns a toda a indústria de gestão de ativos em Portugal, que tem provado ao longo dos anos a capacidade de ombrear com quaisquer casas de outras geografias. Por último, um especial agradecimento à APFIPP por tudo o que tem feito pela nossa indústria.
Conhecidos que estão os melhores fundos PPR, vamos então saber agora quem são os galardoados no âmbito da Gestão Nacional de Fundos de Pensões Abertos, em que são distinguidas 2 categorias de fundos. Na categoria de fundos de pensões abertos com risco 3, o melhor fundo é o Fundo Real Reforma Garantida, gerido pela Real Vida Seguros. Muitos parabéns!
Boa tarde a todos. Em nome de toda a equipa da Real Vida Seguros, agradecemos a atribuição do prémio de melhor fundo de pensões aberto com risco 3 de 2021. Aproveitamos ainda a oportunidade para congratular mais uma iniciativa conjunta do Jornal Negócios e da APFIPP. Muito obrigada.
Na categoria de fundos de pensões abertos com risco 4, o melhor fundo é o Fundo Horizonte de Valorização, gerido pela AGAs Pensões. Muitos parabéns aos vencedores.
É com orgulho que recebemos uma vez mais o reconhecimento dos prémios Jornal Negócios APFIPP. Desta vez, com o Fundo de Pensões Horizonte de Valorização, o segundo maior fundo de pensões aberto do mercado e que desde janeiro de 2019 viu os seus ativos duplicarem. Por fim, uma palavra especial de reconhecimento àqueles que efetivamente ganharam este prémio. A equipa de gestão de investimentos, que desde julho do corrente ano fazem parte do grupo AGAs.
Distinguidos os fundos em diferentes categorias, prosseguimos para a atribuição do prémio à melhor dissertação académica, que, nesta edição, tem o especial apoio da Moraes Leitão Galvão Teles Soares da Silva e Associados. O prémio da dissertação académica visa distinguir as teses de licenciatura, mestrado, pós-graduação ou de doutoramento que se tenham destacado pelo seu contributo para os objetivos destas distinções, ou seja, promover e desenvolver a atividade nacional de gestão de fundos de investimento, da gestão de patrimónios e de fundos de pensões, conferindo maior visibilidade a estas indústrias e contribuindo também para aumentar os níveis de literacia financeira nestes domínios. Este prémio tem o valor de 2.000 euros. Ora, nesta edição, no conjunto de dissertações que se candidataram ao Prémio Melhor Dissertação Académica, 2 destacaram-se particularmente pela sua fundamentação e estrutura, bem como pelo facto de se sustentarem em metodologias, modelos e análises econométricas rigorosamente desenvolvidas, constituindo também estudos de relevo tanto para os investidores como para os operadores de mercado e reguladores, em linha com os objetivos traçados para estes prémios, pelo que merecem um honroso exequo. Temos assim que na categoria de melhor dissertação académica, o vencedor não é um, mas são 2. The Impact of Financial Systems on Bank-Affiliated Mutual Fund Fees and Flows, da autoria de Mariana Cunha, e The Impact of Monetary Policy on the Mutual Fund Flow Performance Relationship, International Evidence, da autoria de Pedro Tomé. Parabéns aos 2 vencedores.
Olá a todos. Antes de mais, quero agradecer à Associação Portuguesa de Fundos de Investimentos, Pensões e Patrimónios por este reconhecimento. Escrever uma tese em plena pandemia foi um desafio diário e, por isso, este prémio tem um sabor especial. Ele reflete o meu esforço e dedicação ao longo da conclusão da minha dissertação de mestrado. Por isso, quero agradecer a todos aqueles que me apoiaram ao longo deste percurso, em especial ao meu orientador, o professor António Freitas Miguel, por todo o apoio, dedicação e sabedoria. Muito obrigada!
Boa tarde a todos, o meu nome é Pedro Tomé. Eu utilizo este vídeo para agradecer à APFIPP e ao Jornal Negócios pelo reconhecimento em relação à minha tese, que abordou o impacto da política monetária nos fundos de investimento de ações. Para além deste agradecimento, gostaria também de reforçar os meus votos de agradecimento para o meu orientador, António Freitas Miguel, professor do IBS, que tornou todo este projeto possível. Resta-me desejar votos de uma boa continuação para esta cerimónia e reforçar mais uma vez o agradecimento.
Para finalizar a atribuição dos prémios desta edição do ano de 2021, o presidente da APFIPP vai anunciar o prémio Personalidade do Ano.
Obrigado. No quadro da atribuição dos prémios Jornal de Negócios APFIPP, foi decidido este ano retomar a atribuição do prémio Personalidade do Ano, para destacar a excelência de uma carreira nesta atividade de gestão de ativos. Foi neste contexto deliberada a atribuição do prémio 2021 a Fernando Rique, atual chairman do Banco BPI. Fernando Rique não iniciou a sua carreira profissional na área financeira, mas muito cedo se viu envolvido nesta atividade, quando entra em 1983 para a Sociedade Portuguesa de Investimento, antecessora do BPI, entidade à qual se encontra ainda ligado. Ficará conhecido no nosso país como uma das pessoas que mais contribuiu para transformar a área financeira estatizada em Portugal após 1974, fazendo com que se tenha modernizado ao ponto de ter hoje uma sofisticação de qualidade internacional. Embora seja mais conhecida a sua atividade como banqueiro, desde logo foi também responsável pela gestão de ativos no Grupo BPI, tendo sido presidente da BPI Gestão de Ativos desde 1990 até 2016 e da BPI Pensões desde 1995, tendo continuado estas funções após a incorporação desta sociedade na atual BPI Vida e Pensões até 2016. Foi assim diretamente responsável pela criação daquelas que são atualmente uma das principais entidades gestoras de fundos de investimento e de fundos de pensões em Portugal. Este prémio é atribuído pela associação que hoje aqui represento, mas dá-se a coincidência para mim muito feliz de me ter calhado o papel de dar a conhecer este prémio, porque trabalho no BPI há largos anos, com o Fernando Rico como meu presidente, e considero verdadeiramente excepcional o papel que ao longo dos anos desempenhou. Gostaria de destacar que, das suas decisões, as que mais me impressionaram foram aquelas que tinham em vista única e exclusivamente o interesse dos participantes dos fundos de investimento, não tendo mesmo, em momentos muito difíceis da nossa história recente, hesitado em seguir essa opção. É, pois, com grande satisfação que atribuímos este ano a Fernando Rique o Prémio Personalidade do Ano por uma carreira dedicada ao desenvolvimento do mercado financeiro nacional, com especial ênfase para o papel que desempenhou na promoção da gestão de ativos e de fundos de pensões em Portugal.
Como disse o presidente da APFIPP, João Pratas, não iniciei a minha carreira profissional na área financeira, mas foi como se o tivesse feito. Em outubro de 1972, juntei-me à equipa que iria lançar o Semanário Expresso em janeiro de 1973. Nos 2 anos que se seguiram, escrevi no Expresso uma página semanal sobre o mercado de ações. No final de 1974, fui para a delegação de Portugal junto da OCDE, onde vários dos comitês em que participava estavam relacionados com os mercados financeiros. Entre janeiro de 1981 e julho de 1983, fui chefe de gabinete do Ministro das Finanças, função que me permitiu acompanhar de perto os primeiros passos da modernização do sistema financeiro português. Finalmente, em julho de 1983, entrei para a SPI, criada por Artur Santos Silva em outubro de 1981, e a minha primeira tarefa foi abrir o escritório comercial em Lisboa. Digo finalmente porque desde miúdo que a minha aspiração era trabalhar num banco, inspirado pelo exemplo de um avô que não conheci e que, entre outras funções, foi administrador do Banco de Portugal e se chamava Fernando Ulrich. Diziam na família que os Fernandos Ulrich eram sensatos e trabalhadores, diferentemente dos Joões, que eram muito mais inteligentes e divertidos. No projeto BPI, onde estou há 38 anos, 34 dos quais em funções executivas, tive a ocasião de participar e acompanhar de perto todo o tipo de operações que se fizeram no mercado português. IPOs, OPVs, OPAs, fusões, emissões de todo o tipo de dívida pública e privada, aumentos de capital, privatizações, e também tive responsabilidades do lado da gestão de ativos, como sublinhou o presidente da APFIPP. Deste percurso, de que gostei imenso, guardo muitas boas recordações que sintetizo da seguinte forma. Em primeiro lugar, o papel extraordinariamente relevante do mercado de capitais na modernização da economia portuguesa. Papel esse que muitas vezes não tem sido suficientemente compreendido e valorizado. Em segundo lugar, o facto de, nestas décadas, ao contrário do que sucedeu em alguns bancos, não termos tido acidentes significativos no mercado de capitais. Os interesses dos vários stakeholders, em regra, foram bem defendidos. A isto não será estranho o facto dos mercados de capitais só poderem funcionar com informação rigorosa e atempada, transparência e bom governo. Mérito dos operadores, legisladores, supervisores, comunicação social e associações profissionais como a APFIPP. Finalmente, mas o mais importante, as pessoas. O meu percurso não teria existido sem o meu primeiro patrão, Francisco Balsemão, o embaixador Manuel Belo, que me levou para a OCDE, os meus ministros João Moraes Leitão e João Salgueiro, Isidro Fainé, presidente da Fundação La Caixa, Gonçalo Cortázar, CEO do CaixaBank, e last but not least, Artur Santos Silva, com quem, desde julho de 1983, acumulei uma dívida de gratidão que nunca poderei pagar. Agradeço também e muito às centenas de pessoas com as quais tenho trabalhado ao longo deste percurso. Sem o seu saber, paciência e dedicação, as muitas atividades em que participei no mercado de capitais não teriam sido possíveis. Uma palavra especial também para as muitas pessoas com quem tive o privilégio de colaborar nas empresas, nos investidores institucionais, nos supervisores. Conheci muita gente boa e muito competente. Termino agradecendo à APFIPP e ao Jornal de Negócios este prémio que muito me honra. Muito obrigado por se terem lembrado de alguém que participou sempre com grande entusiasmo nas atividades do mercado de capitais e que, por isso, ainda valoriza mais esta distinção. Muito obrigado.
Continuando esta celebração, vamos iniciar um segundo momento de debate, este dedicado ao tema Investor Protection versus CMU Development. Have we found the right balance? Este painel de debate tem o apoio da Euronext Lisbon. A moderar o debate teremos o presidente da APFIPP, Dr. João Pratas, que nos dará a conhecer o excelente leque de oradores que tivemos a oportunidade de reunir nesta emissão. Recordamos mais uma vez que poderão ser submetidas questões ao moderador do painel através da área de Q&A disponível na página de acesso ao evento. Dr. João Pratas, o palco é seu.
Good afternoon, once again. Welcome to the second panel of our event. And we have a very distinguished panel with us to discuss the investor protection versus CMU development and the right balance. So with us, we will have Camille Thomas. He is Director General of the Luxembourg Association. We have Fabio Galli from Association. He is Director General of the Italian Association. We have Tanguy van de Verve, who is the Director General of APFIPP, the European Fund Association. And last but not the least, Thomas Richter from BVI. He is the CEO of the German Fund Association. Thank you very much for participating on our panel. And a few introductory words. When we look at investor protection and when we think about this balance between investor protection and development of CMU, we should keep in mind that we must make a good sale for investors. Investors should be presented with the right products for their portfolios on one side. And on the other side, we also need to develop capital markets. This is very important for the development of the European economy. But also, we also need to provide products which are not just savings for the retail, for all the people in Europe, but we need to provide investments. We need to provide products which allow them to invest. Welcome very much to this panel once again. Thank you very much for being with us. And I will try and give an idea of what I would like to think about on this panel. We have had some crises in our economies. We had the dot-com crisis, then we had a huge crisis in the beginning of the 21st century, which was the financial crisis. And Europe has been building and building on the protection of investors. I mean, it's understandable, but the problem is if we are moving too far away, if we are taking away the investors from the market, and if we should stop and even maybe go back a little. And this is a little bit what I would like to have your ideas on. So, in very general terms, and starting with you, Camille, I would ask you the following. There's a difference in capital markets in Europe and in the US. You find it more developed, more people into capital markets in the US. The question I'd like to ask is just starting with a very general question. And even before I make the question, let me tell you all that, well, for the purpose of having different questions, I will try and ask different things to every one of you, but please feel totally free to come back to any question you would like to comment, which has been presented to someone else. So the question I have for you is, do you feel that this difference between Europe and the US has anything to do with excessive regulation in Europe? I mean, are we being excessive and are we taking away people from the markets contrarily to what happens in the US? Or is this a bit far-fetched because maybe the US has a higher culture for risk than in Europe? I mean, how do you see this? And secondly, in general terms, do you think we should make regulation a bit softer on the sell side?
Good afternoon, Joao. First of all, thank you for having me today. I do hear an echo. Sorry about that. As regards your question, I mean, it's true that the equity culture in the US is definitely much more developed. If I look at some of the statistics that IFAMA has published in its latest fact book, I mean, shows that, you know, the holdings of equity by households in Europe is 5% compared to the US 27%. If I look at investment funds, 10% versus 15%. So generally in Europe, we do have a lag of equity culture in contrast to the jurisdiction like US, Canada, or Australia. To me, that there are a couple of factors that, you know, may explain this. Certainly, households in the US are perhaps less risk averse. Secondly, I think they have much more comfort in investing in equities, probably also because they do have a very well developed pension scheme with the 401k. So over the years, they have come across investing in capital markets. And thirdly, I would also say that there's maybe an increased financial literacy compared to what we are currently seeing in Europe. And combined with all this, I think in continental Europe, we may also have a partially an excessive culture to do too much of an investor protection. Don't get me wrong, I think investor protection is important, but the current framework, I think, empowers investors to take a much more active role, and that's the whole purpose of the Commission plan within CMU to try to channel private funds into capital markets and maybe achieve less reliance on the banking system than is currently the case. That would also then mean that we open up opportunities for private investors, or certainly certain categories of more sophisticated investors, into investing into other type of assets than maybe the traditional long-only one. I'm thinking of private assets. So this is something that should certainly be looked upon. But definitely for me, an element is the lack of financial literacy, and to make retail investors aware of the benefits of investing into capital markets and not saving their money just on traditional bank accounts.
Thank you very much. Picking on what Camille said, Fabio, I would like to ask you a question on financial literacy. I mean, financial literacy is many times mentioned as a problem for retail investments in financial markets. And my question is, well, how do you feel about it on the first hand? And the second one is, how far can we expect financial literacy to go? The question I'm trying to ask you is, when we look at general means of knowledge, like if I think about medical knowledge and, I don't know, technological knowledge, not everybody wants to know about it. So it's like, I'll use a very typical question. I mean, I go to the doctor and I say, well, he says, you have this problem. I say, okay, tell me how to cure it. I don't know. I don't want to know why it exists, so I just want to be cured. And in a sense, in financial literacy, it seems that we want more. And it's, do you believe we can really make people really understand the products, or should we have a different ambition? What are your thoughts about this, Fabio?
Well, this is really a fascinating issue, because we're all confronted with this responsibility of addressing the question of financial literacy. Let me give you some like an idea on what is the Italian market. It's a market of good savers who've been basically developed a culture of investment in a world where government bonds and real estate was yielding very high, very interesting returns for a tenth of years. So that meant that it looked quite easy to invest, and it looked in the 80s and 90s, even if you consider the inflation gain, you would think that most families were able to save and invest at a reasonable return, actually at a good return. And the whole system broke down recently. We all know that this kind of free lunch, where you have real returns with some kind of like a reasonable risk, it's gone. So now the challenge is really enormous. And what can we do about it? Is there anything like, what can we do in terms of financial literacy? Is it really our responsibility? It is, but at the same time, as you were mentioning, Joel, people think that investing is in some way an easy bet, because compared to, for instance, your health or your legal service, you fundamentally think that you understand the game and you expect to win without any pain. You know that most people, at least this is true for a lot of our clients, they think that investing in some sort of privileged information, and if you don't make money by investing, is because you're tricked into something which is wrong. And this is a big challenge for the industry, because at one point it's very difficult to bring knowledge to a population that really thinks that it's a matter of privileged information instead of having a real balance between risk and return and taking responsibilities for the choices you make. Now, there are good signs that something is improving, and I think that a lot of the financial literacy is coming from learning by doing. You know, more than all our programs or ideas, truth is that people learn to invest because they tested themselves. And one proof of this is that we were all scared. At least Italians, our industry was scared at the beginning of the lockdown for COVID-19, where markets really corrected, went down. We expected some kind of knee-jerk reaction, typically pro-cyclical, meaning that people would be selling out of fear because of the situation, which is not what happens in the US, where people are much more steadfast in their approach to what we call cyclical markets. And to our surprise, the response was pretty calm. So people didn't react to the 2-month drop that we experienced. There wasn't the typical knee-jerk reaction that we had, for instance, in 2008 during the first financial crisis. And I think these 12 years from 2008 to 2020 actually made a lot of people learn to invest and understand the cyclicality of the markets and the longer-term view. So in some way, there is a kind of financial literacy that is coming with the learning by doing. And I think people have been exposed now to some more complex portfolios, more diversified into equities, so that in some respect, we should look forward with a kind of optimism to what is happening. Maybe regulators are behind the line and behind the curve in terms of understanding that what people are actually understood, which is the American way of buying into, creating your portfolio and just stick to it, because short-term cyclicality will just damage any knee-jerk reaction. So on one side, we come from a culture that was kind of backward. On the other side, there are good signs that financial literacy is coming, because now it's been experience is actually trickling down even to the end investor.
Fabio, thank you very much. It's of course a very interesting discussion, and of course very important for us. Still on this trend, still on the idea of information and literacy education, I have a question for you, Tanguy, which is related to this. There is sometimes a discussion if you should put all your bets on financial literacy on the long term. And of course, I am not, of course, wanting to discuss the benefits of education, because education only has benefits no matter what the activity. And of course, financial education is the supreme thing we must look at. But I'm just trying to concentrate on the immediate sale. I mean, should we concentrate on long-term literacy, or is it very important to also concentrate on the literacy on the point of sale? I mean, some people think that, well, what is really important is that when you sell, when you are buying, when you're subscribing for a fund or any other financial product, it should be well explained to you, and it should be explaining the basics of what this product is, and not only wanting to be a disclaimer, so you just send away your responsibility on this. So how do you feel about this, Tanguy?
No, thank you, Joao, and thank you for the invitation. Do you allow me to get back to some of the previous questions, as you offered us the possibility to do so? I would like to just complement what I heard from Fabio and Camille first. So concerning the US, I think, a major difference between the US and Europe is we live in welfare states. We pay a high level of taxes and we get a lot in return. So, there is probably less of an incentive to save for our old age. That being said, this is changing, and the retirement savings gap is increasing in most of our countries. So there is a need for more financial education. And if I go back to your analogy with a doctor, I think it has its limits because, true, when we are sick, most of us tend to go to the doctor and expect the doctor to, find a solution to the sickness. But with investors, this is not really how it happens. The reality is that most consumers are depositors. They have bank deposits, but they don't even think of going to their financial advisor to get advice when it comes to being invested in capital markets. So if the doctor for the consumers is the financial advisor, we don't see that many depositors going to their financial advisor. So they are losing out. So to your question about financial literacy, it's a long-term effort, but it will not be sufficient, but it is highly necessary, especially to allow investors to make sense of all the disclosures that we or the distributors make available to them. That is absolutely key, and it will be even more important for them to be financially educated to make sense of the upcoming ESG disclosures. And I guess we will be talking about this in a moment. So I think that, yes, it is absolutely necessary, but it will not be sufficient. And I think indeed with you that there is a role for the distributors to play when it comes to financial education. But again, it's necessary to empower the consumers. And I think it was Camille or Fabio mentioning this notion of empowerment. And we are very pleased to see that the Commission at last recognizes that regulation needs to empower the consumers instead of simply protecting them. As one of our members keeps saying, the biggest risk for the moment is not to take risks. The biggest risk for an investor or for a consumer, a citizen, is just to stay in cash. So, financial education is absolutely key, especially when you make a reference to the increasing retirement savings gap in many of our countries.
Thank you very much, Tanguy. Thank you very much. Moving on this, Thomas, I'd like to hear your opinion on one specific theme, which of course, notwithstanding if you want to make any other comments from past questions, there is a big difference on the selling side when you look at UCITS and when you look at other products. Well, basically, UCITS are not complex, and all the other products are complex, namely all the AEFs. When we think about long-term products, because they are not short-term, they don't have the liquidity that the UCITS have, they will almost necessarily be complex, which it might make it difficult to sell. I have seen product creation where the manager is very worried about creating an AAF because this will make it very difficult to sell. And what I wanted to ask you is, if this is something that you see in the markets that you follow, is it really a problem? And secondly, if it would make sense to reopen this discussion. I mean, in the past, the Commission did not want to have the discussion. It's easy to say, well, AEFs are complex, when in fact, they might be quite simple. I mean, they might be very simple. If I have an AEF that has 20% on an asset, it's very easy to understand, so it's not really complex. Is it a problem? Should we try and reopen this discussion?
Yes, we should, Joao, but let me first thank you for the invitation and say welcome to the audience. I've heard we have a great audience today, and it's a pleasure for me to join you in this conference. I have some opinions on what has been said before concerning financial literacy, for instance, and over-regulation by the EU. If it comes to consumer protection, we have gone too far. definitely too far. Let me give you 2 examples. First example is all the warnings according to MiFID and to PRIPS. This can reduce your wealth. It's like the warnings on cigarettes. This can damage your health. It can be lethal, etc., etc. It's been treated like a toxic product, and this is definitely the wrong way to attract investors to the European capital markets. And so far, I think it's very counterproductive for the Capital Markets Union. Another example, and we are living in, well, we have almost 2 years of experience with MiFID II. All these readings of disclaimers and documents and tapings, etc., that retail investors have to bear is conceived by them, is understood by them as made for discharge the advisor or the bank rather than helping them. It's absolutely counterproductive. I know no single investor who appreciates this kind of consumer protection. So I would like to support your view that this is indeed counterproductive and excessive regulation. Talking about the US, we should be careful about national stereotypes. I think it's not because they are much more literate. It's because of their pension system. They have this more or less automatic involvement by 401k savings plans or the IRA. So that necessarily means that they have to show some interest in what they are invested in. And this is, for me, the key for Europe as well. It's not financial literacy. Of course, we have to do more. Of course, our consumers don't know enough about all these things, and we spend a lot of money in financial literacy and in trying to convince our politicians to put it on the curriculum in schools, etc., etc. But I think the most efficient and effective way to increase financial literacy is the involvement in pensions, like 401k, for instance. So now let me come to your question concerning the AIFs. Should we reopen the discussion? Actually, there has never been a discussion about that. We should start it rather than reopen it. From the very beginning, the AIFM directive made a difference between UCITS and AIFs are automatically considered as complex products. Even many AIFs are not complex. I remind you all these open-ended real estate funds that we have, for instance, in the German market. We are talking about more than 200 billion euro. These are not complex products, but the idea that an AIF might include something like clawbacks or illiquid assets or additional payment obligations, etc., that led to the conclusion that an AIF needs to be complex, which is again the wrong choice, I think, and it would be really helpful to start this discussion in the AIFMD review.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you very much. Moving on this matter, and as Tanguy refers on his last words, we have ESG to look at, and well, we had I believe an excellent panel just now. I won't look into substantial details, but once again, I'll look into regulation and what we are expecting to do with our clients. And I mean, we are expected to explain where we are on ESG, and ESG is really very, very complex. So once again, and also picking on what Thomas said, I'll start with you, Camille. Are we heading to a set of disclaimers where once again the participant says, well, he understands whatever? Or I don't know, how do you see this? I can tell you that on my side, I am quite worried about it. If I look at the RTSs, I think, well, even I have some problems understanding the technical aspects of sustainability. And so I think I agree that the participants should be told something about where the fund is on sustainability, but I think it has to be very simple. It has to be a very simple message so he can truly say, well, okay, This I understand. I mean, it's like a percentage or something like that. How do you feel about this, Camille? What are the difficulties you are seeing on this? Since very soon we will have to have something to give to our participants.
Thank you, Joao. I mean, it's true that sustainability, that's a mammoth project that, in my view, is even more complex to implement than maybe UCITS and AFMD. And, you know, if I look at SFDR and the taxonomy regulation, they are obviously all impacting the entire value chain, you know, from product design to portfolio management, risk management, distribution. So it's certainly a challenge for, you know, regulators, but definitely also for our industry, and not necessarily obvious to get it right from the beginning. But I think the asset managers have a card to play to contribute by engaging with the European Commission and with consumer and retail investors. As regards the technicality, you know, Article 8, Article 9, I agree that it is very complex, and maybe we should stop using, you know, financial jargon that is not necessarily meaningful to investors. Maybe we should change our narrative to make it more understandable to the man on the street. The big problem we're having, as we all know, is there are still, you know, many uncertainties and stumbling blocks. We've seen in the panel before, you know, the consistency of data, the expectation from the public side, the media, maybe NGOs to say, well, financial industry has to be bolder in its approach, and there's you know, greenwashing being done. But for me, it's we are on a journey, and we've engaged on the path. And I remember Commissioner McGuinness made a point, you know, about you know, SFDR and taxonomy regulation, saying that, you know, it's a legal framework that will help finance the transition towards a sustainable economy, but the framework is not fixing strict requirements in terms of product design or a minimum percentage of green assets that products must commit to. So there is no such thing as green equity, and we also have to maybe educate and raise awareness much more, because if I look at a study that the EU published back in 2019, there was over a sample of 1,400 listed companies in Europe, only 2.5% qualified as green. So that shows the magnitude of the journey we must embark upon. And obviously, this translates also into the way how we explain and communicate this to retail investors, and also make the point that our industry, you know, is not the only one who can solve the problems. We are, you know, one of many that have to support that transition. But you know, to answer your question in short, I think it should be, you know, to investors, you know, the wording should be put in much simpler terms.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Camille. On all these matters, Fabio, I would also ask you a question. I mean, we talked about some quick fixes last year because, well, we were worried. We were specifically worried with the markets and with the needs of the economy. And of course, with COVID, things thankfully seem to be better now. But we still have many uncertainties. And we talked about quick fix, and some measures were taken. What is your view on the quick fixes? Have they been very practical? Have they been very technical? Are we still on a way to see if this is going to make any change? At a time, it seemed that MiFID, the comment was, well, MiFID maybe went too far away. But in my opinion, it seems to be still an incognito. I still don't see exactly where it's moving on to. Do you have any opinion on this, Fabio?
Well, I think unfortunately, more than quick fixes, there should be some regearing of our approach to regulation. Let me go back to what I said in terms of the game. Financial literacy, maybe it's not a very precise word. What I meant is that there is an element of cultural background and bias in terms of the behavior. So let's say in a sort of easy way that Americans are more adept to taking on risk than Italians. Now, that gap that was really huge 20, 30 years ago is now getting closer. That doesn't mean necessarily that the financial literacy of Americans is superior, but definitely they have had in their life generally an approach to risk which is more aware of the risk that you have to take in order to get a return. Now, while I see this shift in attitude, on the side of regulation, I tend to agree with my colleagues. There is an issue with regulation. A lot of the warnings and the paperwork and all the really bad indication that you get when you read a document of offer document of a UCITS is because financial instruments were regulated in a vacuum where there wasn't really precise regulation of advice on how to serve your client. But now that we have had MiFID II in place for a number of years, regulators should really move away from creating this kind of like warnings that actually excuse the regulators themselves more than offering some help to the client, and actually take the responsibility of supervising the way that advice is provided. So that it doesn't, I agree that it doesn't make much sense today to label an AIF as inherently dangerous, or it doesn't really make any sense to provide some kind of regulation in terms of the harmonized LTIF, which Parliament transformed into a potential retail investment product, and then introduce some limitations to the way an LTIF was working that are completely incompatible with that kind of investment. So we should refocus regulation in terms of what is good advice and good service to the client, and actually allow the manufacturer, the investment company, to produce portfolios that are well diversified and completely flexible. Which doesn't mean not to provide proper information, but it means that warnings and limitations and restrictions are not the way ahead in terms of regulatory approach.
Fabio, thank you very much. I will take your words. I hope I understood them well, and I'll ask you, Thomas, a question on this. And before I do, it's actually an excessive regulation can have side effects that maybe the legislator is not looking at. I'm thinking about unbundling on research, where we had the bundling of the fees of research with the dealing. Then this was unbundled. It seemed to make a lot of sense. But now we don't seem to have some type of research. So it's sometimes we move into solutions, and then it's worse for the end investors. And the question I want to ask you, Thomas, is this. Sometime in the 80s or 90s, the person would go to the bank, and the bank would say, well, I have this product for you, you should buy this and that. And now this seems to be over because there's a lot of fear that the person is not literate financially, that he doesn't know. Should we change the way we look at this and think, well, okay, I should have financial literacy, that's excellent, but above all, and picking on what Fabio said, maybe I have to make sure that the distributor is careful to look into the needs of his client. So he has to see if he needs liquidity, what age he has, what problem, what is his portfolio, and then he could sell. I mean, he could sell, and if there's a problem in the future, he would say, listen, I did a due diligence over this client. I looked at his needs. I'm not selling a long-term product to a person 93 years old. Does this make sense, or should we still keep on focusing on all these disclaimers that the buyer has to look at?
Well, it makes sense, Joao, and this is actually the way the suitability test in MiFID is paved with. Normally, we should go this way. On the other hand, you are so right by saying that we have a different view on the investor today, on the retail investor today. It was not a long time ago when we said, well, we have responsible individuals that should care about themselves. Today, retail investors are more treated like victims of the financial industry. And this, of course, changed the legal framework we are working in. And of course, we should go the way of suitability. The advisor should be made responsible for the advice he gives without all these disclaimers and discharges and readings of legal stuff to their investors. But let me add on what has been said by Fabio with the risk averseness of the Europeans against the Americans. There is one big difference, and this is politics. There is a big, at least in my country, there is a huge responsibility of the political arena for this retail behavior. And the reason politicians in my country keep on demanding that the pay-as-you-go system, the government pension, is safe. So people think that indeed it's safe and the government will take care of them and tend to them, and they don't have to care themselves. They feel more or less safe. Most of them know that there is a lot of tax money in the pension system, but still they believe in what is said about the safetiness of the pension. And this is the big difference to the Americans. The Americans are not told that the they have no real pay-as-you and no good pay-as-you-go systems. American investors are not told by the government that they don't have to care for their pension. And this is, of course, this has an impact on the behavior of retail investors. And that's where political responsibility and accountability starts. And you know that we just had these Bundestag elections. Nobody, no single political party was addressing this issue. No single one. The pay-as-you-go system in Germany is bankrupt. Demographics speak against it, but it wasn't even addressed because it's a kind of an uncomfortable issue, and it's not nice to tell voters uncomfortable truths.
Yes, Thomas, I really see your point. In Portugal, nobody's talking about it either. And of course, the only talk is, well, the system is not bankrupt because right now you're getting nearly 80% of your active life salary, and in 20 years you will be receiving 40%. So it's not bankrupt because you are going to receive less than half. And of course, this is a main problem everywhere.
In Germany, they don't reduce the pension; they increase the tax, the taxes where it's paid from taxes. So the level of pension stays the same, but the money comes from the taxpayer rather than from the pension system.
Yeah. Well, Tanguy, I have one question for you on an important issue for the fund industry, which has to do with inducements. Inducements were quite limited in the last MiFID review, more limited than in other activities, because if we look at what is MiFID and if we look at the insurance, the rule is a bit tighter on MiFID, and apparently there are new talks over this. Are we walking towards a ban of inducements? What could this mean for the industry in your perspective? Once again, something which is looking at protecting the investor. Will the investor actually be protected this way? What are your views on this?
Thank you. Very topically, indeed, the Commission is looking into it. This was part of their revised action plan on CMU. The good news is that, indeed, they're also looking at extending the currently applicable regime under MiFID, applying to independent advice to IDD, to the insurance sector. So there would be more of a kind of level playing field. But there is still possibly, this idea of having a ban on all types of inducement. They are looking into it. They have commissioned a piece of research. I think that what we are saying and the way we are framing the debate is that we should not talk about inducement too much. We should talk about advice. What is it that people get in return? What kind of advice is advice needed? And we are saying, if you want to turn depositors to investors, because this is a key challenge. If we want to finance innovation, digitalization, sustainability, we need to put this money to work. But as we were saying earlier, you still have way too much cash in sitting on bank deposits. So how do you move from deposits to investments? For that, advice is absolutely key. Likewise, advice will be key to make sense of all this complexity coming out of the Sustainable Finance Action Plan and all those SFDR reporting requirements. So we say, listen, look at advice. Advice is needed. We need to make sure that we do not create any kind of advice gap, as we have seen in those jurisdictions which have introduced a complete ban on inducement, the UK, out of the EU, but also the Netherlands. And we also need to look at the total cost of ownership, because we need to realize that in those countries where you do have a complete ban on inducement, the investor still has to pay for advice. And if you look at the total cost of ownership, it's not clear that, say, in the Netherlands, investors are better off and pay less at the end of the day. But I think really the key question for us is advice, avoiding an advice gap and recognizing that in most of our countries, the main distribution channel consists of bank branches. And we cannot, change everything, because then for sure we will not reach this objective of increasing retail participation in capital markets.
Thank you very much, Tanguy. Well, we are just coming to the end of our conversation. I'll ask a brief remark to the four of you, just to close. Camille, starting with you.
Yes, I think what is important for me is that we should continue to invest in means to increase financial literacy. Secondly, I think we should advocate for good and balanced regulation based on prior cost-benefit analysis, and thirdly, hopefully we can promote also long-term savings for the benefit of and investors, notably through Pillar 3 schemes or PEP. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. Fabio, a few words.
Well, I do honestly think that the market realities will precipitate some real configuration of regulation, because we need access to capital markets that are more diversified and developed than just what we used to give to our clients, which means that regulators will need to really tackle the issue of what is good regulation. And as Tanguy said, moving out of this concept of protection into the concept of empowerment. And the present condition of low interest rates, whatever you expect from inflation, will stay with us for some time, at least at a low level. And the need to move into long-term investments will definitely make this shift in the mindset of regulators very, very urgent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tanguy, a few words.
Well, just reminding that there is this coming retail investment strategy that the Commission is expected to publish sometime in 2022. So there is an opportunity for all of us to influence the thinking of the Commission and make sure that this becomes an opportunity to increase retail participation in capital markets, which, by the way, would be an opportunity also for the EU to reach its objective of strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy has a lot to do with not depending on third countries when it comes to access to finance. But the money sits on our bank accounts, but we need to activate that. That's absolutely key. And finally, also looking at the ways to leverage the potential offered by digitalization, to increase consumers' engagement.
Thank you very much, Tanguy. Thomas, some final remarks?
Well, I have so many financial remarks to make, but let me focus on this ban on inducements. This is one of the stupidest ideas ever. And it's unnerving because it's so narrow-minded. It's so incredibly narrow-minded. It's from people who have not the full picture. We have so many banks in my country, savings banks, cooperative banks, other banks, who are living from commissions these days, who don't make money from interest rate differences. Do you really want them to take away this business? Do you really want them to go belly up by an inducement ban? Is that a good idea? And then they only talk about funds and securities. Do they also talk about life insurances? Would there be a ban on inducements for life insurances as well? Do they see the problems life insurances are in due to the low interest rates? Do they have this in mind? I don't think so. And do they look at the UK, where the RDR was introduced in 2013, which is a really bad example due to the huge advice gap that they have in the UK today? Do they consider what's happening there? So I really must say I'm really unnerved by this ongoing debate about ban on inducements.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Camille, Fabio, Tanguy, and Thomas, thank you very much for having been with us and having honest and frank and express ideas about what you think on this topic. Thank you very much, and I hope we can be together very soon in presence. Bye, and thank you very much. And thank you all for attending this conference.
Thank you, João.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Chegou a hora de encerrar esta nossa cerimónia com algumas notas finais. Começo por dar os parabéns a todos os participantes e, em especial, naturalmente, aos premiados. Quero agradecer muito aos promotores que apoiaram esta iniciativa, a todos os participantes e, designadamente, aos membros dos painéis, que proporcionaram duas discussões importantes e elevadas sobre dois temas que enchem atualmente a agenda da nossa atividade. Agradeço igualmente aos colaboradores da nossa associação por todo o apoio que dão também nestes momentos. Finalmente, e para concluir, uma nota sobre um importante projeto da APFIPP, o lançamento do novo site que decorrerá ainda durante este ano. Passados 10 anos, era tempo de renovar o site da associação com nova imagem, grafismo mais atrativo e maior simplificação na navegação, estando totalmente adaptado a dispositivos móveis. O site de que estão a ver uma apresentação procura facultar informação relativa às iniciativas da APFIPP com interesse para diversos públicos, como é o caso de conferências, formações, com possibilidade de inscrição online, divulgação de dados estatísticos sobre as atividades que representamos e monitorização dos temas que integram a agenda da indústria da gestão de ativos e de fundos de pensões. A área reservada às associadas apresentará igualmente novas funcionalidades, sobretudo na área estatística. O lançamento será feito brevemente. Até lá, não deixem de nos seguir no LinkedIn. Muito obrigado e até breve.
E nesta 7ª edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP foram entregues um total de 15 galardões. Tendo esta cerimónia contado com o especial apoio da Allianz Global Investors, da Amundi Asset Management, da BBVA Fundos, da BDO e Associados, da Fidelity International, da JP Morgan Asset Management, da Moraes Leitão, Galvão Teles, Soares da Silva e Associados, da Nordia Asset Management e da Schroders Investment Management e assim também da Euronext Lisbon. Em nome da APFIPP e do Jornal de Negócios, obrigado por acompanhar a edição dos Prémios Melhores Fundos Jornal de Negócios APFIPP do ano de 2021. Contamos com a sua presença no próximo ano para celebrar a excelência na gestão de fundos de investimento e de fundos de pensões em Portugal. Muito obrigado e até lá!